parents need to be aware that this is what is accepted and what is expected. If they know that that is the philosophy of the district, you have to be prepared to answer a lot of questions from those parents. My responsibility is to make sure that the schedule works, that we provide as much support in the classroom for the teachers and the students as possible, and that's in the form of the special education teacher or a paraprofessional, making sure that wherever possible, the support for the teacher is there as well as the student. So it's scheduling, it's providing that professional development for the teachers and the paraprofessionals on how to work with this. Because let's face it, when you have a student in the classroom with special needs, you have a paraprofessional or a special education teacher in the classroom, but you don't want that student to stand out and feel uncomfortable that that person is there for just them. So it's helping the entire classroom. They are there and to help all the students in that classroom. They don't just sit with that one child unless it's a child who absolutely needs that, and we do have several of those. But my role is to make sure that the inclusion is taking place, that the schedule works for that to take place, and that there's enough support for the students and the teachers.
So how do you feel that inclusion facilitation benefits the school system?
Well, my background is in special education, and I've been doing this for 30 years now. So I think that inclusion is probably one of the most important things that we can do for our special ed population as well as our typical students. This is the perfect example. You have an autistic child who has difficulty speaking. Why would you segregate them in a class with all autistic children who don't speak? So you would want them in a typical setting because they learn from their peers just like any other child. When I was at Naugatuck High School, I was a transitional special education teacher, and what that meant was, and I taught history, that I had seriously emotionally disturbed students from 9th grade to 12th grade. I was also certified to teach typical peers. So what I did was I had asked my principal if I could take some of my seriously emotionally disturbed children and put them into my typical United States history college prep class. And I took 3 of my SED kids, seriously emotionally disturbed, and I put them in that class. And what I found was that actually their behaviors were better than some of the typical peers in that class. What they needed was they needed the additional support academically, to keep them moving, to make sure they did their homework, to make sure that they understood the material. But behaviorally, the reason why they were in special ed was because of behavior problems. When they were with their typical peers in a regular United States history college prep class, they had no behaviors. So I consider that success. And it just goes to my belief that children should be with their typical peers in a regular education classroom. Well, I think first of all, I think regular education teachers need to be trained, and they need to have a deep belief that the special ed child is their child. It's not the special education teacher's child. They're all our children, typical or special education. So I think a lot of it has to go with professional development so that the teachers feel confident, because what I find most with teachers is they really want to do a good job, and I think their biggest fear isn't so much the child being in their classroom, it's that they won't have the skills to deal with that child. Our director of special education is an advocate for children, and through her leadership and her deep belief that all children can learn, and her willingness to work with staff, not only paraprofessionals, but teachers and parents, I think that's a big piece of what makes our special education program successful. She really has implemented a number of procedures to make parents feel comfortable and to make teachers feel comfortable, and I really, truly believe that's a big part of our success. You really have to make the teachers feel comfortable with their skills in dealing with this. I believe that you're also going to have your superior's support, and you're going to have parental and community support also. And I think education, you tell them what your end result, what you like your end result to be, and then you give them a path on how to get there. I think that you can almost equate inclusion to a civil right, that these students have as much right as any other student to be in a public school setting with their peers. I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that it's the best place for them, because it gives them the ability to be educated with their peers and learn from their peers. And it gives the typical peers the ability to develop compassion, understand diversity, and these kids are going back into the community at some point, so they've already developed that network. I truly believe that every child should be afforded that right, and I know that laws ensure that that occurs in the United States, but I really truly believe that it's a right that every child should have, not only in the United States, but any other country.
When we began this project, we were not fully aware of the effect that inclusion had on the school system as a whole. We were not aware of the benefits that stretched much farther than that of the student's learning environment. Not only does the included student feel the benefits, but their teachers, their administrators, and their peers do as well. What you, the audience, just witnessed was a prime example of just how much inclusion impacts our schools. Hannah Grimme is not the first student to be included into a standard education environment, and she is certainly not the last. The fact is that inclusion has been incorporated in a public school environment for a lot longer than most realize. Now, inclusion is not perfect. The truth is that every aspect of education has some form of flaws to it. But with active participation by the public, these flaws can be resolved. For now, what's important is that we embrace these students for not only what we can teach them,